Looking for a weekend getaway? Maybe some time away from all the hustle and bustle of the world, somewhere you can find some peace and quiet. Many people choose a cabin as their destination for a relaxing weekend getaway, but what it offers in serenity is matched by its isolation. And we all know what can happen when people find themselves alone, out in the middle of nowhere, with something sinister lurking close by. You're about to hear 5 stories. Some are terrifyingly true, and others are tall tales strictly for the campfire. The question is, can you tell the difference? A husband wakes next to his wife in their luxurious summer getaway cabin after a night of drinking and barbecuing. Still in a bit of a haze from the alcohol, he goes to make breakfast when he passes his daughter's bedroom and notices the door is open and the bed neatly made. He assumes she is probably already awake and moving around, but after searching the cabin, she is nowhere to be found. After contacting the local police, word travels through the small community and dozens turn up to search the neighboring woods for the missing girl. The authorities interview the neighbors and friends who were at the cabin the night before, trying to pinpoint the last time she was seen. But it's the younger brother who saw her last, opening the doors to the basement cellar. No one recalls seeing her after this point, and it's only then that the mother remembers asking her daughter to fetch more meat from the walk-in freezer before going to bed so it could thaw in the refrigerator overnight. They open the freezer to find her lifeless, frozen body inside, where she has been trapped for over 12 hours. A horrific accident that leaves the family feeling their hearts turn stone cold. Walking home to her cabin in a tranquil, wooded area, a young girl senses nothing off about the morning. After staying the night with a friend, she expects to find her family inside the house, still perhaps sleeping. But when she opens the door, the silence is anything but peaceful. 3 figures lay motionless on the floor, each in a pool of red blood, she soon realizes, each bound at their wrists and ankles. The realization hits her as she stares into the empty eyes of her mother, brother, and friend, all dead. Frantically, still trying to process the horrific scene, the girl stumbles through the house where she finds her 2 younger brothers asleep in their bedroom, completely unharmed. But her sister is nowhere to be found. Shocked and traumatized, she leads the boys out of the cabin, telling them to keep their hands over their eyes, all while stepping over the bodies of their loved ones. She runs to a neighboring cabin for help, the whole way telling herself to wake up, wishing it were all just a nightmare. A young couple on a quiet retreat to a remote mountain cabin turn in for the night, falling into a peaceful slumber as the snow falls quietly outside. But just as they're drifting off, the man hears a faint tapping sound coming from the living room. Between the booze and the warm bed, though, he has no desire to get up and investigate, and quickly fades out of consciousness. Upon waking in the morning, the woman goes out to start the car, but stops instantly at the sight of footprints and blood in the snow. Human footprints coming up to the front door and leading away into the woods, the trail of blood following. The woman yells for her boyfriend to come look, and he immediately calls the police, feeling suddenly unnerved by their isolation. The authorities follow the tracks, and not far into the forest, they find the body of a man in a creek, his feet barefoot and bloodied with severe stab wounds to his chest and torso. The boyfriend thinks of the tapping sounds from the night before. More than likely, the frantic knocking of a man in dire need, a man now dead in the frozen crimson snow. A mother drives to her daughter's remote cabin after learning she never showed up for work and didn't call in, something very unlike her daughter. Immediately pulling into the driveway, she knows something isn't right. There are beer cans in the normally pristine yard, and inside the cabin, clothes are strewn about, and her daughter's beloved dogs hadn't yet been fed. Most troubling of all, the daughter is nowhere to be seen in or outside the property. Police begin searching, but it isn't until divers take to the water of a nearby pond that they spot footprints and a drag mark in the dense, muddy lake bed. They don't dive much deeper before finding a barrel, and inside it, the body of the daughter. She had drowned, but the mother believes it's clear the drowning wasn't an accident, especially after the barrel mysteriously disappears from the yard before it can be examined for evidence. What exactly happened to her daughter and who was responsible remains a mystery, one that still haunts her wherever she goes. Christmas seems like the perfect time to get away from the busy day-to-day and to spend more time with family. One such family returns to their cabin after some Christmas shopping in the blistering cold. Eager to get inside, one of the daughters rushes up the stairs, where she comes face to face with a man pointing a pistol at her. Another man appears as the girl's mother and grandmother enter, and the gunfire and bloodshed begins. Both the mother and grandmother go down in gunfire, and when the father walks in, he too is shot. The daughter and her sister are forced onto the family snowmobiles at gunpoint as the two men soak the house with gallons of gasoline, setting it ablaze just before forcing the girls to drive them away to the family car. The daughters, grief-ridden and fearing for their own lives, comply and can see the smoke from the road as they're abducted and driven away. Their lives changed forever in under an hour. So, now it's time to reveal the fact from the fiction. Which of these stories were false and which were a horrifying reality? First up is our tragic story of a young girl who accidentally locks herself in the freezer at her family's cabin and perishes from the cold. While people have died from this very cause, this particular tale is false, a pure concoction of the imagination. What about our second story of the girl returning to her eerily silent cabin to find members of her family dead? Well, it's not the beginning of a whodunit crime drama. This horrific tragedy is known as the Keddy murders, where 4 members of the Sharp family were tortured and killed in their own cabin. Their murderers have never been identified or apprehended. Which leads us to story number 3, the couple who hear the knocking of a man slowly bleeding to death out in the cold snow. While the thought of this scenario is certainly terrifying, this one is entirely fictitious, though I'm not sure how many people would have answered the door either way. Story number 4, the body of the beloved daughter found stuffed in a barrel just outside of her cabin. While you may wish this were a mere fantasy, it's an unfortunate reality. Debbie Wolf was a nurse who disappeared on Christmas night in 1985, and while the police thought it might have been an accident, her mother always thought otherwise, and no killer was ever found or brought to justice. And our final story of the murder and the abductions of an innocent family during what is supposed to be the happiest time of the year is the unfortunate truth of the TD Cabin murders. The 2 killers waited for the family to return all day and even filmed themselves opening the family's Christmas gifts sitting by the tree. They were apprehended not long after fleeing, and while the killing and subsequent arson were surely traumatizing, both daughters were found unharmed, and the father managed to survive being shot and escape before the flames consumed the house. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for watching and showing so much support. I really appreciate it. If you'd like, you can press on screen now or the link in the description below to tune into my last episode of Truth or Tale. Also, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to my channel because you won't want to miss what's next. And I'll see you next Wednesday.